Back up with the leader now, and the sun has burst through once again, but the cobblestones are still absolutely treacherous here. We're now on Sector 8 with the leader at Auchy-les-Auchy. 206 kilometres. That group behind has reorganised itself all together again, but they still can't do anything about this man in front.
They're going to have a very hard time pulling him back unless they decide 3 or 4 riders from different teams to make a concerted effort to reel him in, because they won't get any help at all now. And I have to say, Johan Museeuw put in a remarkable recovery there, Phil, to ride himself back into the group. It's hard to tell who's on the front right here at the moment, because the face of this man is absolutely disguised by the mud that has been splattering all over here. This is the lone leader. In fact, they're on exactly the same section of cobblestones, so his advantage now, Phil, cannot be very much more than about 30 seconds, and there they are.
Absolutely right. 37 is what they've just said, and they can see him now, and they can trace him with the helicopter around as well, as this group is still organised. And it says a lot for the determination of the immediate non-teammates here who are chasing him down, because there's certainly no effort coming from Canavan, Veensteins or Museeuw in that respect.
It's hard to say, but this in fact is Georgi Hincapie on the front here. Very concentrated, looking to try and nail back the man who is leading this race, and then the team tactics will completely and utterly change. But the other riders in this group have been put under pressure by having had to chase Wilfried Peters since they came out of the forest of Arenberg some time ago. And in fact, I have a feeling that Leon van Bon might have reintegrated this group, because I thought I caught sight of 9 riders in this group and not 7.
Well, there are 9 riders in the group. In fact, I've got 9 too, Paul, so we may have lost. Well, you're right, Van Bon and Piers have come back to make that group 9 strong. Back up with the leader. Unaware totally, I would imagine, of the troubles coming from the group behind, of crashes and punctures and bad wheel changes. He's just getting on with the job he's paid to do, and that's to try and win Paris Roubaix, and if he can't win it, to cause everybody else except his own team to lose it. Now there you see the gap is coming down now as we race towards the end of this 8th to go sector of Pavé. It's no longer 37 seconds now, and it's all coming down under the terrific riding of George Hincapie. He's riding like one of the best classics riders now, just sitting there prepared to take on the action when he feels he has to. Knows now the strength of the other riders around him. He must know that Van Bon and Chris Piers at the back here, just one in front of Matan, are not as strong, although he keeps coming back to the group. Can't be relied upon now to be a pacemaker.
It's actually quite a difficult situation, because Stefan Weisserman, Phil, is a strong bike rider in this group, but he's having some mechanical problems, because every section of cobblestones we come to, it seems as if his feet can hardly stay on the pedal, so he is just really trying to survive over the cobblestone section, so he won't be much help for Hincapie at all. But Hincapie riding this like the dominant rider in the group. He's up against some pretty clever riders though, because Johan Museeuw is probably the most tactically supreme rider in this group right now. Nico Matin had a win in the recent 3 days of La Panna, won the time trial as well, is in excellent condition right now. Cofidis getting themselves an awful lot of publicity out of the classic season. The concentration on the face of this man is unbelievable right now. Please go away and leave me alone while I suffer in silence, is probably what he's trying to say.
No, he's happy. A little bit of a thumbs up. How a man can feel happy at this stage of the race, I don't know, because we've done 207 kilometres now. But he's fought his way back into the race right at the front end. You wouldn't believe such a large bunch had rolled away from Compiègne, would you? Because we've hardly ever seen them all day. Most of them now will be thinking of retirement at the second feeding zone. That's where the big dropouts happen. And there's a problem. Is there a problem here for Veensteins? Hand is up, wants his service car.
George Hincapie wants to go back too, so he too is calling forward the service car. I think this may well be just a drinks call at the moment, keeping himself topped up with food and with fluids. The work on the front here now being done by Chris Piers. These 2 riders will have communicated together, but I don't think Nico Matin is in absolutely ideal conditions. In fact, if they start playing around like this because the speed has gone down, the man at the front, Wilfried Peters, will start to extend his lead once again. It came down to just 37 seconds, and I think looking at the speed here and the fact that everybody's taking on board drinks, it's likely to stretch out again.
A word for Domo, and this is Veensteins.
Team manager in the car there is Mark Sargent, a former champion. Oops-a-daisy.
Wow, that was
Keep an
close.
eye on the wheel in front of you, Mr. Veensteins. If you're not careful, you'll find yourself sitting on the floor pretty smartish. This happens all of the time, every day during professional cycling. A rider touches the wheel in front, but if you are slightly tired, you find yourself pretty rapidly on the ground.
Yes, a very nasty fall it would be too when you're not expecting it. Marc Sergeant there, himself a great Belgian rider, former champion of Belgium, now in his first role as assistant director sportif of the Domo squad. And he must be feeling very content with the way things have gone right now. 4 riders, 3 of them in front of him and 1 up the road. Perfect tactics and all panning out nicely. We're approaching 40 kilometres to go. That'll come when we hit the Peve sector 7. That's not too far away now at Nice. Back with the leader.
Well, I think he's about to get caught, Phil, because they're actually pulling out the neutral service vehicle here. And mind you, there is a section of cobblestones just up the road here where they pull out all of the vehicles. In fact, no team following cars are allowed to go down the section of cobbles because they're so bad. So maybe the gap still is quite reasonable for Wilfried Peters here, and he will get followed only by the neutral service motor bicycles. I think that could be what the situation is, because looking back down the road, I think he's stretched his lead out to around about 45 seconds. A chance here to look at how much these machines are being punished on a day like today. And the strange thing that was very noticeable by its absence this morning in the starting area, Phil, was that there were hardly any teams using the suspension front forks.
Yes, well, that's quite interesting, because when Gilbert Duclos-Lazal won a few years ago, virtually all of the race field opted for those suspension forks. But you can see here that the Eddy Merckx of Wilfried Peters certainly hasn't got any fitted today. Now he's heading up now for Pave number 7. As Paula said, this is a nasty one, no cars allowed. And the regrouping behind has given us again 9 chasers. Latest we've got on Andre Schmiel is he's still in that group at 2 3/4 minutes. So he's hovered, held and come slightly closer when that group has slowed down. But that's still 2 minutes, you know, to the rear of those 9, and that's a long way.
It's been a very strange race. You would never have expected to see so many stars in a group of 14 or 15 riders going clear with almost 150 kilometres to go to the finish, because the original breakaway containing the men like Wilfried Peters and Johan Museeuw and Weinsteins left in the early section of cobblestones with 150 kilometres or 100 miles to go to the finish. And it seems now as if everything has stabilised out. Even this group here we're looking at with the big names in there, they're not pulling in on Wilfried Peters. And if they don't take control of the race quite shortly, this man might open his gap up once more, which at one time looked as if it was going to be completely annihilated.
Well, I think it has gone further ahead, you know. There's certainly no action here. They're just holding their position. He's kept on the rhythm. I think he's crept away. I think he's pushed it up to probably 3/4 minute.
It's the Domo Farm Freak car up alongside there, chatting away with Johan Museeuw. They're probably discussing the situation out on the course and just exactly what they want these guys to do. It's going to be difficult for Museeuw. He'll be quite happy to sit on these guys at the moment and allow his own friend Wilfried Peters and teammate to stay off the front. But he will want to win himself. He's won this race before. He won it last year, which was a great comeback. And I remember him crossing the line and pulling his foot out and showing the crowd his knee. There he is right now, and he seems to have come back, Phil, once again from another accident, a motorbike accident, even stronger than he did before. Hincapie, on the other hand, looking very much at a tranquil rider today, nice and relaxed, perfectly positioned on his machine, goes to the front on the cobblestone sections when he needs to, keeping a close eye on the other guys in the group. He may be a little bit frustrated by the fact that he's isolated in this group. He hasn't got any friends here and no teammates at all.
Certainly a group for the men on form, because 1, 2, 3, as they finished in Gent-Wevelgem, Hincapie, Van Bon and Westerman are all in this group. So they've got the legs, they should be confident. Back up with the leader now, swings out on a nice wide stretch of road for a change. Wilfried Peters is pulling clear now, 45 seconds the last check. So almost reeled in, starting to run out again.
Well, that's very strange, because he looked as if he was a man who was totally spent, but he hasn't given up. He's obviously got the nod from the team management to keep going, keep the pressure on, even if they come close. Do not surrender until they overtake you. So right now he's getting down into a fairly concentrated position. He looks as if he's got a great time trialing position just now. His job, Phil, really is to take the pressure off the shoulders of his teammates as we head up towards the finish in Roubaix. It's an awful long way to go, but this man is one of the tough men of the sport. There are not many Wilfried Peters around, and the only man I can really compare him to was the great Sean Yates, who was probably the second highest British finisher in Paris Roubaix, behind Barry Hoban, who finished 3rd place on the podium here.
What a ride that was. Barry Hoban also won 8 stages of the Tour de France. and one of the few men who beat Eddie Merckx in his heyday as well when he won a semi-classic in Belgium. That was Gent-Wevelgem, in fact. Now looking down from the helicopter, these are the select band of 9. 3 of them are passengers. The other 6 don't seem to be organising themselves that well, but they are holding Peters. He's not slipping away. We are left with still another 7 sectors of pavé to come. The last one we don't really count. It's just a run down the last kilometre. Van Bon passes quickly to our camera. There's Johan Museeuw, last year's winner. Not the first time he's won Paris Roubaix either. Looks very cool, doesn't he? Happy with the way things go. He's almost laughing here. He's almost smiling there, Paul. He's content. He could never have imagined this race would run like that. Now an attack by who else but Ludo Dierksens.
Dierksens is a tough guy, but I think Johan Museeuw now feels that he's got this race almost in his hand. He feels confident. He looks confident. He's very relaxed. Anytime there's an acceleration, he just jumps onto the tail end of it. He feels that this race is certainly going to go to his team, and he would very much prefer it if it went to him as well, because he is a man who loves Paris-Roubaix. He's been a great king of the classics over the last 10 years or so, and the last team car up there having a chat with their riders is in fact the Cofidis team car. They've got 2 men in this group, Matin and Piers.
And this is George Hincapie now, still looking very cool with his glasses back to front. That's probably the best way to see through him, I would think, today. Hincapie looking good. Van Bon and then Matin. We're now on sector pavé number 7 here, and this rider still very much holding his own as they're coming to around about 42 kilometres to go at this point.
Reaction here because Ludo Dierksens is not having any of this marking or tactical manoeuvring right now, and he said, forget it boys, I'm off. He's accelerated, catching them by surprise, because up until now, Phil, he's always accelerated on the cobblestone sections, and it looks as if it's Museeuw who's the man who's closed down the gap. But Hincapie is being very attentive to all these little splits in this group. He's always trying to stay very close to the front. This section of cobblestones is only very short at 700 metres, but it is, from past memory, a very slippery section.
9 men still locked together here from the original 14, and they are still trying to keep this race. So we've lost now Jens Voigt, sadly. Legs didn't quite make it through to this stage of the race, but now this man is driving onto the cobbles here, as again Ludo Dierksens trying desperately now to reach his Belgian counterpart. And there's a problem up front. It looks as though Peters has had a puncture. Is it Peters?
That's Peters at the front here who's been in difficulty. I'm not sure what that was at all. There was a guy at the side of the road standing with 2 wheels, but I don't think he had chance to change a tyre. I think the problem really is that this is a very muddy, slippery section of cobbles. He lost momentum. He must have had to put his foot down, and that has rattled him a bit. He's coming out of the section of cobblestones now. As I said, it's only 700 metres long, but I remember a couple of years ago seeing Bernard Hinault actually running. Now the problem is trying to get his feet back into the clips. He's losing serious time now. You see him trying to force it in there. That's because of the overshoes and because of the mud and dirt getting into the cleats.
So we caught the tail end of that one as clearly a problem there for Wilfred Peters. He's looking over his shoulder. He knows, doesn't he, that this group is not far behind. Here comes Dierksens now leading the rest to a particularly treacherous stretch of cobbles.
I would say that's brought the gap down again. The last time check we had was 45 seconds, but I would say that, Phil, was going back inside the 30-second mark again. These riders, if they were to have a huge accident... Carnarvon's now the man in difficulty. Servais Carnarvon, it's a rear wheel puncture for him, but the car is immediately on his tail. These guys from the Mavic Neutral Service today have done a sterling job. They've been there at almost every flat tyre. They maybe haven't changed the wheels so quickly, but at least they've been on call.
Absolutely right, and Carnarvon gets away. It's so hard because all of the gear clusters and the skewers and differences in equipment these days, the wheels have to be lined up as well as fitted to the frame. Now let's see what, a little bit of repair going on at the front now. Oh, and this is a bit dangerous, but anyway, Peters, they're going to try and oil his cleats, are they?
Now the problem was he was trying to spray water on the bottom of his shoes there coming alongside, because what was happening is the cleat would not slip in there and lock up. This is the same problem that the man at the front, Wilfred Peters, was having. And let's have a look at the gap right now. It's still quite a good gap, and he's opening up again. I thought it had come down dramatically, but in fact as soon as we come off the cobblestones they shut down.
But we're down to 8 men here, so I don't see Carnarvon arriving, and in fact Museeuw is looking over and he's trying to slow the chase down. They're waiting for Carnarvon to come back, which is quite amazing as we head on to pavé number 6 now.
Well, The man at the front, Johan Museeuw, certainly is the master of this orchestra today. He's really calling the tune in this group. If he wants them to accelerate, they do. If he wants them to slow down, they do the same. And he is slowing them down, trying to keep Domo Farm Frites in the tactically superior position of having 3 men in this group and the 1 man off the front. At the back here, Stefan Weseman looking very nice in his pink jersey there, but having again serious problems. A lot of riders having problems with their cleats and pedals today because of these very treacherous, damp and gritty conditions.
Well, here's the face now of the leader on the road. Had his problems as well. He seems to have sorted them out, and he continues to push on, and he's still holding his lead around about that magical 45 seconds. The chase group still going in fits and starts. The Cofidis boys now contributing.
It's Chris Pearce there accelerating. Matin is the Cofidis rider fairly close to the back. They've decided now that they're going to have to try and split these riders. At the back of the group, in fact, it looks as if Servais Knaven has come back, and he has.
He's got on, and I think he will go up and thank Museeuw for that, because they sort of control the race till he rejoined, but Servais is back. And, well, they've all had the problems, Paul. Every one of the Domo boys in the race, including Peters, have had reasons to stop, and they're still there dictating the situation.
Well, I think most people at the end of today will have a hard luck story to tell. Even George Hincapie had a puncture at the very wrong time. Inside now, the 6th section of cobblestones, and it looks as if Wilfred Peters has actually picked up the pace somewhat. This is the section of cobbles known as the Pont Thibault, not to be confused with the Pont Gibus, and you can see now that Wilfred is absolutely hammering down this road here.
217 kilometres can be ticked off now. The French flag there indicating the wind slightly behind Wilfred Peters. But look at this section of water.
Look at that motorbike
as well. Oh my goodness me.
It is so deep at the side of the road. I think somebody should have actually gone upside along Peters and reminded him that maybe these cobblestones are a little bit damp, because the way he went round that corner there, Phil, it was almost as fast as I would have gone round it in dry conditions.
Quite amazing. This man has got no fear. The latest check on the Schmiel Shandri Sorensen is back there as well, by the way, now dropped from the leaders, and the group that's coming behind there is 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So Big Rolf has been picked up by Andre Schmiel and can tell him all about what's happening up here.
That's the same corner there. This is one of the sections of cobblestones too that was in the danger of being dropped from the race. The 2 Cofidis riders a few moments ago on the attack and now in difficulty there at the back. And Weseman, you can see how strong he is, Phil. If it wasn't for this problem that he keeps having with his pedals, he would be ripping this race to pieces. But now he's come to the front. In second place is Museeuw. Hincapie's looking good. There's Knaven. Ludo Dirksen taking a rest on this section of cobblestones, and the world champion Weinsteins, well, he really is the joker in the pack for Domo Farm Frites, because he really is the number 1 man. If this group goes together onto the stadium at the finish, he's the man to win the race.
Well, they're finding their own trail here now as the sun glistens off the surface, as these riders now just fight for anything they can find to stay upright. They've had a real battering today, but what a great race it has been, and hats off to Wilfred Peters. He's been obliged to lead by himself since he came through the forest of Arlenberg. George Hincapie might have been with him, rather thankfully probably isn't, and he's keeping that lead still at 3/4 of a minute.
I think the speed these guys are going now, Phil, they're going to start to eat into that advantage. This is another section of cobblestones which is very famous. Hincapie now taking over the pace making at the front. It seems, Phil, as if once they accelerate on the cobblestones, they almost halve the advantage that Wilfred Peters has over them. They get onto the tarmac roads again, the smooth part, and then he stretches out his lead once more. Hincapie flying along here. There's riders at the back of this group are in serious difficulty right now. This is the best I have ever seen George Hincapie ride in Paris Roubaix. He's come into this classic season in ideal conditions. Let's not forget, Phil, he rode a very good classic season last year with 2 broken ribs. This year he's been in absolutely ideal conditions. Weseman again in difficulty, I'm certain because of that pedal problem of his.
I agree. He's still finding his foot jumping off the pedals, and hats off to his strength, but how long can it go on for? Once again, bridging the gap back up to the main part of this 9-man group.
Well, 9-man group which is split over about 40 seconds at the moment, because these guys here, Van Bon and the 2 Cofidis riders, trying to come up to the front. This now is, I think, Stefan Weseman, who has recovered. A moment ago he was off the back, and now he's shot through to the front of the group.
And he's not afraid to work either. It's almost as if he wants to strike a blow just to let them know he's still okay and he's not really suffering, just so they know. There are 6 of them got back together again. Van Bon, Piers and Martin are the 3 riders who have not crossed the gap at the minute.
Ludo Dirksen, strong boy, right on the frontier, picking the pace up. In fact, we're getting a time check, Phil, that the gap is now down to just 20 seconds on this man here at the front. He's still looking exceptionally strong. Where's number 5? He's a team domestique, the man who has helped Le Johan Museo to many of his great classic victories. No happier than when he's riding on the front of the main field, and he can almost feel the breath of those guys behind him right now. He's looking over his shoulders, and because of the nature of the final of this race, when you zigzag across many of these small fields in north of France, you can very often look over your shoulder and see where the chasers are coming from.
And for the moment at least, the equipment of Wilfred Peters is standing up to the pounding he is personally giving it, as he continues past the crowd who cheered him all of the way. Another sharp right hand bend, a narrow road, but this time no cobblestones at all. Our next stop will be at Sector 5, Siswang and Bourgel, and they're looking at a stretch there of about 1400 metres. Even the cars can hardly be recognised now. This is the telecom car, completely covered in mud. Little bit of food there for Stefan Westermann. They're not too far behind there, Paul. That same right-hand bend, are they?
No, Nico Martin at the back of the group here. You can see the neutral service vehicle right up alongside Wilfred Peters. He will not give up at all. If we can just pull back slightly, we can see that they're there. It's almost all over now for Wilfred Peters, because the rest of the group is right in the same straightaway as he is. And I think very shortly, Phil, he'll be raising that white flag and putting it high in the high up above the ship.
Still a good 20-25 seconds, but they can see him now, and that's the incentive for them. Westermann again has gone to the back here, but he needn't, because there's no cobbles coming up, and if he really wants to keep those feet on the pedals, perhaps he should try and lead into the cobbles here.
Well, this is a long section of smooth road. There's 12 kilometres of smooth road in between these two sections of cobblestones, and the next section is after the town of Siswang, another very bad section of cobblestones and very muddy as well, and that's where the next launch of attacks must certainly come. These guys, once again, Phil, having gone exceptionally fast over the cobbles, are slowing down on the smooth part of the road, and I think what we're going to see, in fact, is Wilfred Peters is going to stretch out his advantage again. You can see Ludo Dirksen there in the Lamprey jersey on the front. He's quite happy to come and set a tempo, but it's not a chasing tempo. I think now they feel they've got the measure of Wilfred Peters and they can catch him any time that they want.
Well, that's the impression we get, but on the other hand, with the handicap of the other Domo riders here, I'm not sure whether they profit by catching Peters, because they're going to face an immediate attack from, I would think, Canavan as the most likely, because Weinstein's the sprinter and Museo is the rider who's supposed to win, so the obvious man to use next would be Servais Canavan.
Wilfred Peters making his long lone ride here. He's led this race since that very strong attack after the Forest of Arenberg, and he has got down into a very good rhythm. A few moments ago I thought he was suffering quite a lot, Phil, and you can see now he's opening up his advantage over the rest of this group. It's still not very much more than 30 seconds, and strangely enough they seem to have turned off the gas once more. They can see him now nearly all of the time as this road zigzags its way up through the Artois area of France towards the finish in Roubaix.
It seems absolutely ages since the Forest of Arenberg, and these riders now allowing him to run out again. In fact, the gap is 37 seconds once more as he continues to go up, and they're just not really chasing him down. They're still continuing to play a little bit of cat and mouse here as we look down at Stefan Westermann on the front, then Leon van Bon just about hanging on for recognition now. We're getting a bit desperate, I'll be honest, as we look at the mud on the faces of these riders. We're all going to remember the 99th Paris Rubé, that's for sure.
One of the classic ones, one of the legendary ones. All of the riders, strangely enough, this morning realised that it was a very special day. It was a day that would go down in the history books because of the weather conditions, and they all seemed pretty excited about it. I think because the majority of riders who come to Paris-Roubaix, Phil, come here because they really want to race this event. In the past, we've seen the Spanish and some Italian teams coming up here, and as soon as they got to the first feeding station, they were pretty happy to pull out and go home. Wilfred Peters, on the other hand, is certainly not one of those riders. He doesn't want to go home except after he's been to the showers in the velodrome, and he's up riding in a good rhythm once again. He's very strong bike rider. You see here how low down he is on the handlebars, a typical Belgian position there. Instead of actually being on the drops of those handlebars, he's quite comfortable having his hands on the top of the bars, just keeping hold of the brakes, and when he needs to take the pace up a little bit more, he drops down there to take his centre of gravity a bit lower to go around the corners.
Well, the cheers still reverberate in his ear here. Wilfred Peters has been a superhero today for Domo. Still gritting his teeth, giving it everything, looking a bit tired now, I think, and perhaps the effort proving just that little bit too much. The legs caked in mud. He's heading now for the next sector of pavé, which will come at Siswang. I'm not too far away from it, maybe 5-6 kilometres, something like that. As the sun warms him up a little bit, I think, Paul.
Well, he's led this race, Phil, for almost 60 kilometres right now, all on his own. Nobody to talk to, nobody to take a resting ride behind. It's been a complete and utter solo effort. He is starting to have a hard time to keep those big gears ticking over. You can see by the way the top half of his body is rolling about. But I think everybody in this situation right now is having a hard Paris Roubaix, because the race started in earnest at the first section of cobblestones, and everybody has been chasing since then, trying to pull themselves back into the race. Even André Schmeel, who is still around about 2 minutes and 20 seconds behind in the company of Pierre Sorensen and Maximilian Chiandri.
He's doing just enough to clip off the crowns of these corners and miss the holes at the same time. But I just caught a glimpse there as we hit the 30 kilometres to go sign of the speedometer on that motorcycle, and in miles per hour he was riding there at 27 miles per hour, and that is very steady bike riding. Quick drink as we head out into the last 30 kilometres now. 19 miles to the finish. It's beginning to look a possibility, this.
Well, bear in mind that this man has been in the saddle for almost 130 miles right now, so it really is a tough one to ask a man to keep pounding on the pedals after having been on a bike for that length of time. And bear in mind, when you throw in 30 miles of cobblestones as well, it makes this one of the toughest bike races in the world.
Well, at that 30 kilometre board, 45 seconds is the official gap. Here they are as they hit that, 45 seconds the gap. And still the same names with the three Domo riders, not completely disrupting the chase. You see, they're working through in the line, swinging off, but of course they're not driving, they're just keeping everything going smoothly.
Quite strange right now, because we got the time gap at one stage down to just 20 seconds, and now Wilfred Peters is starting to open it up again once more. He's on the smoothest part of the course, in between two very difficult sections of cobblestones, and behind the guys are starting to get a little bit more tactical, and what they're thinking about right now is the big section of cobbles to come up, the cobblestones at Siswang, and of course the cobblestones at the Pavé de l'Arbre, which is a slightly uphill section of cobblestones where if you're strong you can ride away from everybody.
Almost twilight sunshine now, rather weak it is too as it comes through the rain clouds of the day. Temperature still down, bitterly cold today, but these riders probably haven't got time to even think about it. Museo there, right in the centre of our picture. It looks as though they're all in the same team jerseys right now, not just three of them. Canavan also looking over his shoulder and coming through. The other Domo rider, do we need reminding, I ask anymore, is Roman Weinsteins.
These guys are all over the front now. They're trying to slow down the pace, obviously placing themselves in second, third and fourth now. They're discouraging any organised chase on the front. It is a very strange tactical system, and you can see that in fact Ludo Dieriksen is looking back. He wants some help to come from the other riders in this group. He feels now that some of the other men are starting to become passengers, and this is quite strange, because with Weinsteins on the front, the advantage will certainly now go back to Wilfred Peters. If the other guys don't come forward and chase, Peters will again start to increase his lead.
Still those 5 sectors to come, 2 of them broken into 2 little separate sections. So 7 sectors of cobbles in all to cross to bring this to the end. That's about about 6.5 kilometres of cobbled roads to decide what they are going to do now about Wilfred Peters. There is a man who's been simply superb, as he was in the Tour de Flanders, Peters. Matan has had a good classic season as well. He hasn't had a lot to come out of it, but he's always been in the action and in the early breakaways. And same as Stefan here, Stefan Westerman, who's been knocking on the door, and he's got 1/3 place in the recent Gent-Wevelgem, where George was the winner, and he's on form too. Big George looking cool, giving nothing away, but might be feeling a little bit embarrassed by the number of riders from the Domo Farm Fleet squad around him.
One man feeling a bit frustrated in this group is the man there in the Lampre-Dakin colours, because he's probably the strongest man in this group right now, and he hasn't got any allies at all. He's being completely nullified by the overpowering presence of all of those Domo riders in the group. Every time he goes to the front, all they do is just sit on him, and psychologically I think that is starting to hurt.
A little bit of an echelon forming now, indicating the wind coming from the top left of our picture, blowing across the riders to form that diagonal line. Back up to the leader, no shelter for him behind anybody. Wilfred Peters ploughs a lone furrow here. Time for a little drink.
So important to keep topped up with energy right now, Phil, because this man has been leading this race ever since he moved away on the Forest of Arenberg. And I do wonder what George Hincapie's reaction would have been if he'd come out of the Forest of Arenberg in a two-man group. Somehow I don't think George would have wanted to ride in a two-man breakaway situation all the way to the finish. I think he would have waited for a return of several riders from the group behind.
Well, Peters will celebrate his 37th birthday during the Tour de France in July this year. Let's see if he chooses to ride, as this field gets himself back together again now. Still the world champion rider, Parиж Rubé. Number one is last year's winner, Johan Museeuw. This is Peters, or Dierksens rather, who has a habit of wearing that strange looking crash helmet, which makes him so easy to pick out, and today that's vital, I think. And here's George looking at the line. Never shown any signs of feeling the pace today. He's been superb, looking straight back up on the outside, no messing about, back into the fray. Nico Matan in turn is sitting at the back now, seems to have shut down for the moment. Maybe a few deep breaths and he'll recover.
Matan is probably suffering from a long Classics campaign. He was in ideal situation when he took out the victory in the 3 days of La Panna, but maybe not bouncing back quite as much as he thought he would after a very tough Tour of Flanders, which saw him not only crash on two occasions but have two very badly timed flat tyres. He's got a teammate in this group right now, and they obviously have had the word from the team management to ease it off, not to be too aggressive, because of the presence of so many riders from the Farm Frieds team. Because as we get closer to the finish, they will certainly try and launch an attack. And the great thing, as you said earlier, Phil, is they do have the advantage of having Roman Weinsteins in this group, because attack after attack will come, and all Weinsteins has to do is follow them, because he's got a great chance of taking out the sprint if there's no success of a breakaway splitting the group. Because I'm absolutely certain now, looking here at Wilfred Peters, that he will be caught once we get the accelerations coming closer to the finish.
Well, how long can he go on for here? He must be asking himself the same question as he continues to head up towards Pavé Sector 5. And he's now showing signs, as he had earlier when we saw his face, that he is hurting himself now to try and keep this race alive at the front as far as he is concerned. It's an awful long way since the Forest of Arenberg, where he broke clear with an awesome demonstration of cobblestone riding up the centre of the Arenberg. And once he was clear, he probably looked and thought, well, I've got no choice now, I've got to go for it. And he's done just that. His lead has never been more than a minute and 2, minute and 3 seconds. It's come back to 37, and at the moment he is still hovering at around the minute mark because this group seems to have slowed down a bit.
Well, he has actually nudged it back up to that minute mark. It came down to 20 seconds, the section of cobblestones just a while ago. But in fact, because these guys are not chasing so hard right now, he has extended his advantage over the rest. And that will be rather good for him, because if they don't make a concerted effort to chase him, and he keeps building on this lead right now, and he takes it to 2 or 2.5 minutes, then we could see a situation here where this man on the front actually steals the show. I find it hard to believe that that could happen, because I know that the man who wears number 1 as last year winner, Johan Museeuw, wants to win this bike race again. He, I think, is just waiting to pounce when we get to one of the more difficult sections of cobblestones, and it will either be the cobblestones at Cizouin or the cobblestones at the Pavé de l'Arbre. Watch out for number 1, Johan Museeuw, coming out of the pack.
Well, they're all going to watch out for Museeuw, I'm sure of that. But again, the bigger turns, the harder turns being done here by Dierksens, as he grits his teeth out of the saddle now at the front, sensing that he may have a chance perhaps as miles tick off. 18 miles to go for this rider now, Wilfred Peters. And it's nice to see the sun out at the moment. The crowd at Roubaix Stadium, which is where we are all enjoying themselves, but I can tell you it is very, very cold. but they are watching this on a huge screen in the stadium, as they always do, and they're seeing a Belgian again being drawn to his own country at 25 to go. The way he bunny hopped the central reservation there.
Absolutely remarkable. He's now going through the town of Sizouin. Very shortly he's going to be on that next section of cobblestones. There is the banner indicating 5 more sections of cobblestones to go, and this section here at Sizouin is a very tricky, dangerous section. It's the section where a few years ago André Schmeel was almost caught by Johan Museeuw. Museeuw coming back on that very strange double suspension bike. He came to within 20 metres of André Schmeel and he popped.
And the crowd know where to stand, don't they? As we saw a Spanish flag flying just there on the left, and I don't think anybody from Spain is going to challenge today. There's the Belgian flag waving at Wilfred Peters. He's attacked these cobbles with the same fury and gusto which he's ridden the whole race with today. Once he gets on the cobbles, he sits on the centre of the handlebars and just pushes those gears around.
Big strong boy, but I tell you what, you can see by his pedalling action now, Phil, it's starting to hurt an awful lot. The group behind are still at inside of 1 minute. It's come down to around about 55 seconds, so he's still actually managed to nudge it up. I can't believe that he's actually still off the front of the main field. When they nailed it back with 37 kilometres to go to 20 seconds, I thought it was all over bar the shouting for Wilfred Peters. But the tactical situation of having those 3 Domo Farm Freaks riders in that group behind has given this lone leader a certain advantage. He's very fortunate too. You can see how much water is at the side of the road. This section of cobblestones is actually reasonably dry.
Here they are. They've entered the sector 2. It is at the tail end there. The tail end, Charlie Leon Van Bon. The gap looked as though, to me, he was struggling to hang on to it, while being driven hard at the front now by the, is it Museeuw here at the front?
This is coffee. It's hard to tell.
Oh my goodness me, I think it's Matan, is it?
It's Chris Pears actually who's on the front at the moment, but you can't recognise anybody in these conditions. Hincapie's the man in second position. Chris Pears is the man who wears 56. The Nico Metin is actually the one wearing the black helmet, and he's sitting at the back of the group. He seems to be having quite a hard time just now.
They're all black helmets now, aren't they, Paul? But still, so looking across, a little bit of a detachment going on the back. So Van Bon has cracked, I think. And I suspect Vesseman is the other man, again having problems with his pedals. Back up to the leader now. The crouch figure now as he races across to join the next sector of cobbles, which is at Bourgel. And he's got that sign now, Paul, you're right. He is now under extreme pressure. Yeah, again, we just caught at the top of the picture there. Vesseman looking down, his feet have once more jumped off the pedals. That's an awful shame.
Hincapie in control though on the front of this group. 3 riders riding away from everybody else. Vesseman in about 7th or 8th position there. Difficult for him today just to find the courage to keep going. It can be so frustrating. Carnarvon's a man in 3rd position, and sitting right on the wheel there of George Hincapie, they know who to watch, is Johan Museeuw. Museeuw still looking very calm, still very collected. He's waiting for the moment to pounce. He is definitely today the Lion of Flanders. He's waiting to go in for the kill, and the man he wants to take out today is Hincapie. Come on, Hincapie says, but they can't. They've got a man in the front. George is now frustrated. This is the moment you've got to be a strong character.
It is, and what can they do? They're not going to chase up with George to Wilfred Peters. It's just a sign of frustration from Big George. And in fairness, if he turns around and asks Dirksens to come and do some work, well, that man has worked his heart out as well. We've dropped 2 riders here, I think, at the moment. And one of them is certainly Stefan Vesseman with his mechanical problems. George again has gone to the front and just continues to pile drive this race now. If you can't make them work, his attitude now is ride them off your wheel.
Well, he has ridden them off his wheel. He's still got 3 or 4 riders with him. The man in second position is Museeuw. 3rd will be Carnarvon. Right on his wheel is Ludo Dirksens. This could be a good move, because if they come off this section of cobblestones and they have an advantage of 10 or 20 seconds over the rest of the group, then I do feel that the man in 4th position there, Dirksens, he will come forward and help Hincapie. But again, Hincapie swings off. He wants some help, and he's going to get it from Dirksens.
He's going to get it from Dirksens, and looking back, 3 more survive there, making 7. So we've still lost 2 riders here, and I suspect the other one is probably Van Bon, because he was dangling too as we came onto that sector pavé section. Back with the leaders now, but not the leader. He's still ahead and hasn't been caught yet. But this other brilliant workhorse, Dirksens, now leans it over on that right-hand bend. Museeuw just sits there, number 2 wheel all of the time, and follows everything. He is, I believe, just simply enjoying Parиж Rubé right now.
Certainly It was only 3 or 4 months ago he was sitting in a hotel room wondering if he would ever walk again, let alone ride a bike. Hincapie's been caught out. You see the little sign there from Dirksen. Come on, riders, let's go through, make 2 lines, and then we can pull back this lone leader. Hincapie now nervous, wants to go further forward. He knows that we've got 2 very difficult sections of cobblestones coming forward right now, and those are the section of cobblestones where I think Paris Roubaix will be decided. The first one will be Confin en Pévèle, and after that it will be the Pavé de l'Arbre. The Pavé de l'Arbre starts off with some very difficult blue cobbles, which on today's conditions will be exceptionally slippy.
And it is Van Bonne who has gone, so too sadly Stefan Westermann, as we continue towards the end of this race now. And what a race it has been, a battle of a handful of men, and the rest have never been part of the scene as we now race towards this last 17 miles or so.
Dirksen swinging off, but Museo is riding a great race for his teammate here, Phil. Every time he's at the front, he's always in second position, and that causes a slowing down in the impetus of this group right now. And what is happening to these guys is they're losing time once again to the man at the front, Wilfried Peters. This man must be totally frustrated, as is Georgi Hincapie. They want to try and blow this race apart, but they're always being smothered by the presence of the 3 men from the big Belgian squad, Domo Farm Frites.
62 seconds when they entered Sector 5. It's come down to 48 seconds now to Peters, but they still can't get him close enough to jump up behind him. As we see George taking a well-earned drink here, and Piers and Martin, and here he comes again. Is he getting back? Because this is well, there's Van Bonne just in front. Maybe they're further behind. No, they're right on. So once more there are 9 riders. They just will not give up, these guys. They race for everything.
Hats off to Stefan Westermann. He's having a terrible day mechanically. His feet can hardly stay in the pedals on these cobblestone sections, but he's got the courage and the determination, and of course the condition to ride himself back into the race when we get onto the smooth roads. But he will have a few words to say with his mechanic tonight. It may well be that it's his own problem. He may well have allowed his cleats to wear out just a little bit too much, which is why you can see him looking down there. He's still looking very supple, but that has got to be playing on his mind.
Got to be. You don't need problems like that when you're committed to an event like Paris Roubaix, but he's riding those problems and he's making the best he can of the situation. And right now Westermann riding a brilliant race. Tagged onto the tail, 9 riders chase 1. No further news at all now coming in from the whereabouts of Smil, so we must presume the worst and that they have dropped right out of contention.
Those riders have been chasing for an awful long time to try and pull themselves back into this bike race. Right now it's all going to go down to, I think, the last 2 tough sections of cobblestones, and the first one is coming up pretty rapidly, and all of these riders will know it. It's a section of cobblestones where Andrea Taffy punctured as he turned onto it a couple of years ago whilst in the lead, and they will see it. It's a long straight road leading up to it. There's a little farmhouse on the left hand side, and you quickly turn left and it goes uphill quite a long way in this false flat, and that's when the legs really start to suffer. But hats off also to Wilfried Peters. Where's number 5? He's the team domestique, the helper of the Domo Farm Frites team, and he's been off the front of this bike race now for touching 80 kilometres.
And this cloud may not have a silver lining up to the right there, because that looks to me as though it's containing quite a heavy downpour. And ironically, we're beneath the sun at this side of the camera just for the moment, as Peters continues to bury himself there and try and hold them off. Nico Martin going through. I'm not sure now it's Chris Piers or Nico Martin anymore, as we look off to the right and see Dirksen's, Weinstein is here, Servais Knaven to the left, regrouping here. And that looks as though the Dirksen's there looking straight across to the Cavendish rider, but I think we're in for a heavy rainstorm right now.
Well, these guys are going to hope that it doesn't rain before they get to the finish, and if it does rain at the finish line, they may well have to have a change in the venue, because it's a track finish at Roubaix, and if it rains on the track, it's going to be pretty scary up in the bankings. 20 kilometres left to go. They will just leave this small hamlet then, and the road will clear up. No trees through the fields, and they will see in the distance the left-hand turn, the little farmhouse, which every one of these bike riders knows from having watched Paris-Roubaix on TV so many times or having participated in it themselves.
Well, I don't think there's any way we're going to escape what's held in store for us off to the right of the picture there. Here's George Hincapie dropping back down, checking the same faces he's seen now for 3 hours. He knows them all quite well. And that Museo welcoming the chance to ease the pace back very gently as he gets through to the front. And we go back to the leader. Stand by. It's the left-hand turn. And when it comes, we're on sector number 4, and this is a brute. And the first man into it is Wilfred Peters, riding a race of his life, and he's ridden a few good races in Paris Roubaix. Makes the turn. Crowd waiting to watch here. I remember Sean Kelly going over the handlebars here. He snapped his forks. This is a brutish settle. I mean, remember a spectacular crash too by other riders as well.
This is the section of cobblestones that my best man Alain Bondu actually crashed on when he was in a breakaway when Kelly went on to take victory in Paris-Roubaix. He actually fell just after the right-hand bend that Wilfred Peters will be coming up to in a short while. Raced all the way to the stadium, just 30 seconds behind Kelly, and when the team mechanic took the front wheel out, the front fork blade fell out as well. So
Ouch.
That would have been a pretty nasty sprint if he'd tried to sprint out for the win with Kelly.
Yes, it doesn't bear thinking about, not what Wilfred Peters will be thinking about just now, as he again seeks the crown of the road, hopes it's the best way. Stays out the treacherous mud on the right hand side there. The cobbles here are still dry rather, and it looks as though the cloud has moved off to the right and away over to Belgium, and that's probably in the favour of the riders now as we continue. We change direction a lot at this section of the race.
Going back to the main chasing group, this is the Cofidis riders. This is Chris Pearce at the back wearing number 56, and they're picking up the pace at the front, but you can see everybody is having a great time out here on the roads of Paris-Roubaix. The man on the front right now, and a good place for him to be, is Stefan Weissermann. He's obviously hoping that he doesn't have any problems with those pedals that have been so repetitive for him. Second last position there is Leon van Bon, the Dutch national champion. And for once, riding near the back of the group on the cobblestones is Ludo Dirksen, but he doesn't seem too happy with his placing.
No, and you can see the guys are bouncing their way towards Roubaix here. As again, it looks a little bit threatening above. We're not getting any closer. The last check we got, he's down now to 35 seconds, so he's coming back again here. And on a rather particularly nasty stretch of cobblestone, still picking his way through.
You can see his
Changes
bike
gear a
bouncing
bit.
there, Phil. This is a very nasty section of cobblestones, another one which is exceptionally wet. A lot of people have been praying for rain. This is the right-hand bend here. It's very dangerous coming around here, especially with all that mud mixed in with the cobblestones. He's around quite safely now. He's going to straighten up. It's around about, I would say, 800 meters to the end of this cobblestone section, but Peters now seems to have lost a certain amount of fluidity from his pedaling action. He's only hoping now that he can survive. He will know that the 3 riders from Domo Farm Freets behind will do nothing at all to the success of the chase, and they will do everything they can to hinder it.
Well, he's been absolutely outstanding today as a teammate, and he might yet win this race, and certainly no one would begrudge him that. And again, poor Stefan Weissermann passes the flag of Denmark there, indicating a headwind. He just can't find his cleats anymore, and there's a bit of a shove. Van Bon has gone down, skidded on the cobbles. He's lost ground, but again, the spectators on hand to try and get him going. We can have a look at that again, I think. Oh, he's just seemed to slide on what appears to be horse manure right in the centre of the mud.
Good move by Pearce, though. He just moves up and pushes that bike out of the way. But look how quickly he's on his machine again. Van Bon is almost onto the tail of Chris Pearce, who didn't come down at all. But this road is treacherous. The next one is even more treacherous, and it's a longer incline up to the summit of the Pavé de l'Arbre. Going by now will whiz by Chris Pearce, who's put in a lot of work for his teammate Nico Martin, who must certainly be a little bit further up the road. These are the conditions that make Paris-Roubaix a legendary bike race, Phil. These are the days that people talk about for years. A bike rider who rides a stage of Paris-Roubaix like this will talk about it for a long time to come. This is Nico Martin, and the man who's having the worst possible mechanical day is the man in the pink jersey of Team Telecom there, Stefan Weissermann. But he's still not out of it because the group is only just in front.
He certainly is not, and hopefully Van Bon will get back, because he's a fighter too, as we've seen. And a great second place in the photo finish to George Hincapie on the line in Ghent-Wevelgem just on Wednesday. And now we're looking here as our camera rejoins the leaders, and it's been a bit of a chase to get round the falling riders. And this is Dirksen's now, followed by Museu, who looks surprisingly clean, at least from this angle, but then so does George Hincapie, who's marking Museo everywhere. The world champion Veenstein, Servaes Kanavan there. This is a very select group. The next man to come along should be Stef Weissermann, but well, will he get back? We keep asking ourselves those questions, because if you lose contact on a long stretch of cobblestones early on, then the chances are you won't get back.
Well, Dirksen's now knows that this is the time to really put the hammer down. They've got one or two riders in difficulty off the back of the group. He's increasing his chances of a high place here in Paris Roubaix because the number of riders in this group chasing is down to 5 men, but 3 of them are from the same team. Second place is Johan Museeuw, playing the perfect team man today, but surely Phil, in the back of his mind, he must be thinking about how he can outwit the other 2 riders in the group with him, Ludo Dirksens and George Hincapie, because Hincapie is riding an absolutely magnificent race. They've got a short section of smooth road here, and then they will take a right-hand turn by a barn onto the Pavé de l'Arbre. It's amazing coming back here to Paris-Roubaix. I remember these roads so dramatically, almost every centimetre of the way into the stadium, and it's from watching the TV so many times over the past few years and having ridden the bike race, it all comes flowing back when you come to these final sections of cobblestones.
Well, these riders have never seen the race all day. They've fought out a very personal Paris-Roubaix. George Hincapie defies description. He's looked so good. He's absolutely superb. He's got to keep on thinking how on earth, though, he's going to outwit these riders in the white jerseys. Back to the next sector of cobblestones now.
The section of cobblestones in the local area is known as les pavés bleus, the blue cobblestones, because they're actually made of a very hard, shiny granite, and very slippery they are indeed. I remember seeing Greg LeMond go down on this section of cobblestones a few years ago, and you can see now this is the trickiest part. He picks his way around. The Lion of Flanders is being pushed into the face of the riders because they are hoping for a Belgian victory today. The road straightens up a bit and then takes a left-hand turn. It dries out a bit as the chase group... Look at this. Stefan Weissermann has got onto the back of the group once again. He's a remarkable rider today.
Well, hats off to this little man, a former East German. There's a tough nut, and now he's riding absolutely brilliantly here. He wants a big result. His back wheel is sliding everywhere here. He's just about, and he's actually, because he's only just come back on, the acceleration on the pavé has sent him straight off again.
Oh, not a great day for him. He will not be happy about this because this is an ideal situation. Look, his foot's out once again. He really is having a hard time staying. And there's a problem there. One of the Domo riders is Museeuw has stopped again, Phil, with a flat tyre. This is unbelievable. This is the worst possible time. And in fact, he's decided he wants to change the wheel himself. Get out of the way. I know how to do this.
Wheel out first, though. And now look at the crowd. Just watch the faces on the crowd here. They've had the honour of having Johan Museeuw change a wheel right in front of him. Now the cheers are launched as he gets back in the action. That's his second puncture that we know of today.
And Nico Martin just flicked by there while Museeuw was stopped at the side of the road. It is so difficult to pick up the pace on a road like this. It is very difficult indeed trying to slip the pedals back in. Once you've got the momentum, though, you can really hammer. And Johan Museeuw is certainly going to hammer right now to try and pull himself back into the race. Somebody's fallen off in front of him. That will have been Martin. Martin obviously was taking risks, trying to stay in front. This is dramatic.
He went down heavy. You see the jersey there, the right shoulder, and a bit of a limp. He might have trapped his heel as well. Well, we saw him go through on Museeuw. Seconds later, Museeuw's gone through on him, and he's gone through so quick. We're having a job catching up with him. This man is riding like a devil possessed now. He's trying to get back on turns because he's also taken away one of the men from George Hincapie to free him a little bit in the chase back towards Wilfred Peters.
This is much better for George Hincapie because I think Museeuw was the most tactically aware man in the group. He will still have to come up with the battle against Rohn and Weinsteins, but right now Museeuw is going to have a hard time to chase to come back. There you can see Dirksen doing again the bulk of the work. Hincapie in second place. If Georgie's got the legs now is the time to hammer. You can ride to the finish on your own from here if you're exceptionally strong. In second position there, Hincapie looking very good all over the bike, trying to stay just on the tail wheel there of Ludo Dirksen. In fact, they're dropping the Domo riders. Weinsteins has lost the wheel. This could be the moment now. Hincapie, if you've got it, go for it.
Absolutely right, and he's got a strong man still in the Belgian Dirksens. They've got to hit them now. This is their best chance they've had for hours. And in fact, they are closing now very quickly on Wilfred Peters as well.
Well, there's Peters, the lone figure of the man who's led this race since the Forest of Arenberg. And finally, Phil, they are there. It's 10 seconds now, and now they will close it down. And the race will take a different face for the first time since we left the Forest of Arenberg. The big pressure on the front of that group is coming from Ludo Dirksen. Servais Karavan in fourth place in that group is in serious difficulty. But this is Johan Museeuw, the winner last year. He's using an absolutely monstrous gear coming up here. You can just see the trees up at the top there. That is the Pavé de l'Arbre. There is a right-hand turn and then another round about 800 metres of cobblestone. The bike is going all over the place.
Nearly again. That looks like Stef Weissermann just ahead of him. But I don't think Westerman can do much about it. He's balancing himself on these cobblestones right now as the big man thunders up behind him. There is the leader, Peters. He will not know of all this chaos going on as the 4 chasers now are getting on terms with him. They've got to keep pushing on now, because if Museo gets back, this race will again change shape.
American flag coming out there for George Hincapie, but this man is hammering along. Right in front of him there is Wesermann. I would expect Museo is going to fly by the German just now because he wants to get on as quickly as possible. He really needs to get on before the end of the section of cobblestones. At the end here, they come onto a smooth bit of road, maybe for only 50 metres or so, and then onto the continuation of this cobblestone section. But look at the water that has flown down here over the last couple of days. It is absolutely poured here in the north of France. Museo makes contact. Let's see what he'll do now.
I was trying to listen in case he shouted there to tell Museo he was coming. He's taken the hard way round now, almost got a bit of a speed wobble in. Got through, and unfortunately we've cut away to the leader here, who is still coming up towards the end of the cobble section of road. Wilfred Peters, look to the left as he leaves the cobble section of road. You've got no more than 10 seconds. In fact, the rider's being slowed by the cars. But 4 men around. Dirksen's Hincapie, the first 2. Now as we pan back here round the bend, this is a good gap. George has got to make the most of this now. Here comes Hincapie, here comes Museo as he tries to get rid of Stefan Westermann.
Well, he's done that. He's actually paced him off his wheel right now. This is the easy part. Westermann again losing his pedal. Oh, what a difficult day for Stefan Wesermann today as he goes onto the smooth section. They go down here for about 50 or 70 metres, turn left, and then they're on the cobblestones again. And for the first time, Phil, now Wilfred Peters has got company since he left the forest of Arenberg. And the man he went past, George Hincapie, was the first man to take the junction.
Well, I make it about 14 kilometres to go to the finish now. And that's the first time they've been on this man's back wheel for hours in this race, and he's still there too, and he'll quickly take stock of the situation that Museo is not here. The man he's pulled his heart out for today, punctured, and he's not in this group.
Well, Peters doesn't know that right now, but as they go by, he's looking across to take a note and account of who is there. But now he will know that they've got 2 riders in the group. He will not know where Johan Museo is, although he is looking back to see what the situation is. He probably cannot believe himself right now that his team leader and best friend is not in the group. Wilfred Peters now is totally out of it, and we now have a 4-man leading group.
He couldn't hold on to the wheel even of his teammates there, who couldn't even look at him because they were so committed just to holding on to the wheel in front of them. Servais Knaven here couldn't even look to him as he tried to hang on to Ludo Dirksens. These 4 are getting a grip now, and the United States are putting themselves in a place for a first ever win, or at worst a podium place.
Well, Hincapie's actually in a much better position right now. It's 2 against 2, but this man is completely possessed. He wants to ride across. Back there you can see Stefan Wesermann couldn't stay on the wheel of Johan Museo, who is an absolute specialist when it comes to riding on the cobblestones. And just in the distance there you can see a rider, and I would say that is going to have to be Wilfred Peters. He's going to catch his own teammate in a few moments' time, and I'm certain he was going to blow by him and say, well done, good job, see you later.
It's got to be Peters, and Museo is going to come up from the rear. Peters won't know where he is at the moment, so he'll be surprised when he sees him. There's the view from the helicopter. Paris Roubaix has become a bitter battle of a man and his bike against the stones of this race, and this is a classic event. The Queen really has done us proud today. And here he comes, Johan Museo, riding onto the back wheel now of his teammate, who has done everything right for him today, and Johan will probably give him a shout to let him know. And I wonder if he can lift his game to go with him back up to the leaders.
We looked down there to see, make sure he was in the right gear. He will gain a lot of confidence by the fact he's been joined by his leader. And even though he is probably half dead on his pedals right now, he will try and find just a little bit extra to try and help Museo reintegrate the front group. It's amazing how a man can do that when his leader comes forward. He is totally inspired, but Museo doesn't need any help right now. Look at that face. This is the man who last year almost died in an incredible motorbike accident, and he's fought his way back. But the leading group now of 4 are really messing around. You see, they won't get any help from Weinstein's. He's going to say, sorry, our number 1 man is behind. We're not going to work with you guys. We're in an ideal tactical situation. We want our man to come back.
Yes, it's a shame, but Weinstein's has no interest in setting the pace here. George knows it. He's got to get on with it. He's got to try and drop in a few attacks if the man's got the legs left and get rid of these guys. Weinstein's is not riding this race for his victory. He is riding this race for Johan Museo. There's no doubt about that. 4 riders then, still trying to break clear here. And George Hincapie of the United States is the man now doing all of the work.
I tell you what, Phil, that really shows the respect that the world champion has for Johan Museeuw here, trying to pull himself back into the race. There's the neutral service vehicle. The Mavic car's done a hell of a job today keeping everybody in this bike race. I don't know where Wilfred Peters is getting his strength from right now, but he is just trying to survive. The red car you can see there is the referee, and there they are. Johan Museeuw is going to pull himself back into this race in the next 100 meters or so, and it's all because of the dedication of his team to this man. And you know what? What a story that's going to be if he wins it for a 3rd time.
Oh, what a brilliant story it is, but there are so many heroes in today's race. They really have ridden well, this particular clutch of great bike riders. But look at the strength and tenacity now of Wilfred Peters, reverberated, and he's come back with Museeuw now. They're back in the status quo, and Hincapie and Dirksens, the survivors, have got huge problems here.
Well, 4 riders from Team Domo in a leading group of 6 men. This is absolutely remarkable. Hincapie must now be wondering what is he going to do. There's only one real place where you can attack now, and that's on the uphill slope on the outskirts of the town of M, but that's so close to the finish line. Hincapie is going to have to think about sitting down and waiting for the sprint.
Less than 2 kilometres remain of the 47.3 kilometres of cobblestones in Paris Rubé, and frankly the last 300 metres you can forget. We're into Charang now, and the breakaway is 4 from the same team. We never thought we'd ever see a situation again where so many riders on the same team will be in at the kill of a Paris Rubé. Peters is just totally inspired. He's still there.
He's hanging on. You can see the way he gets out of the saddle that those legs really don't have a whole lot more power left. Good job coming from the world champion there. Ronan Weinstein's tapping his teammate on his back. He is so happy that they've pulled Johan Museeuw, number 1, back into this bike race. The team has really come on fire today, Phil. This team has been literally criticised over the last few weeks, having been nominated as the super team from Belgium. They have not done a great deal at all. One rider from Domo moving off the front there, I think, is Servaes Knaven right now. Hincapie reacts.
Well, Hincapie again counters, and this, I'm afraid, will be the tail now all the way to Roubaix. There'll be a constant stream of attacks for the men in white, and it's going to be left to George and Dirksens to get their forces together and try and chase them down. That is a terrifically big ask right now, as Peters on the back here. Every time the acceleration goes up, he must grit his teeth and hang on.
Fantastic bike rider in last position on the group now, but he's been in first position since we left the forest of Arenberg. Hincapie's made the move there. He's nailed back that little attack by Servaes Knaven, but wait now, Phil, for the counter-attack, which must surely come from Johan Museeuw. He is going to wait for the right moment to pounce. He will want to leap out of this group, and I think he now feels he's got a chance of riding to the stadium all on his own.
Well, we said earlier, Paul, that if they caught Peters, it would be Knaven's turn to go. We are right about that. Now, if they've brought him back, is there anybody else willing? I don't think Peters can go again now. He is the one passenger going through to Roubaix on this train.
Knaven again, a little dig at the front. Hincapie responding immediately. I wonder how much Ludo Dirksen's got to respond to all of these attacks as well. In third place there, the current world champion, and taking up the rear, Wilfred Peters. Peters is only hoping one thing now, Phil, that he can actually stay on the back of this train and get to the stadium and finish in 6th position. Hincapie has to be very careful now, because they'll try and cut him out. They know that he is the man on form. He's already won Wavelgem just 4 days ago, and you can see they will try and split it. Museeuw attacking, Ludo Dirksen marking him, Hincapie straight onto his tail.
Oh, how painful is this now? Nobody willing to help Hincapie. He's got a bridge and take 3 riders with him. Peters is on a piece of elastic at the back of the group, and yet he still seems to be coming on. Or is this it? Over another level crossing there, railroad crossing, and they slow down. The attack is mastered. Or is it? Another attack has gone.
This is going to be the scenario all the way to the finish right now. Team Domo Farm Frites will attack and attack. Again, they've sent the Dutchman off the front. This is the crouched style, the very low profile style of the man who wears number 3, Servaes Knaven. They are trying to set something up for Johan Museeuw right now as they send the Dutchman off the front.
Servaes Knaven of Holland, 30 years of age now, as he continues to push on. Only just 30 years of age, back last month in March. And these riders are not going to chase him down. It's got to be up to Dirksens now. George continues to go down the line in the hope that perhaps somebody might help him out, but there's nobody there. as he now just has to take a rest and go again. Servais Knaven doing the job for the new team here. He was a member of the Farm Fleets team, brought together now with rivals from last year on the same squad.
Well, this is difficult. This is a hard one to do right now. He's looking over his shoulder. He knows that there are 3 guys in a 5-man group behind who will not chase him at all because they're all his teammates. But what he really is thinking in the back of his mind of how to set this up for Domo Farm Fleets. He's opening up a pretty smart gap. It's around about 200 metres just now. Dirksens and George Hincapie are the only 2 riders in that group there who will be willing to work to try and pull this race back together. But Hincapie, Phil, I think now making a few mistakes because he's gone to the back of the group here and he's not too willing to work.
I think this is curtains. It's got all the smell about it because that rider in the front, Servais Knaven, has broken clear and he has gone so far ahead now. There's nobody got the legs really. This is absolutely perfect and what the Domo team expected would happen until Museo punctured, but he recovered from it.
Well, he recovered from it very well indeed. You can see Knaven looking over his shoulder to see what sort of advantage. He will be inspired by the fact he knows his team will completely defend his position in the back, and if he does get caught, well, there are 3 other men to launch the attack. Well, I suppose I should only say 2 really. That would be Weinsteins and Museo, because there's not very much left in the legs of Wilfred Peters, who's taking up the 5th position in the group right now. Fortunately, it seems as if they've got themselves sorted out there. Dirksens and Hincapie are at the front of this group. These 2 riders have to work together almost as a team now if they want to pull back the leading lone rider, Servais Knaven.
And the ironical thing is that this rider now will enjoy the slower pace because they've got a man off the front. Pressure swings back to only 2 chasers, and so Wilfred Peters is now going to recover possibly from his long escape earlier in the day. I wonder how Johan Museo thinks here, because after all he was meant to be the winner, but he can't now affect a change when it's his teammates up front.
The most important thing for Domo Farm Fleets today is for them to get the win in their team. This is the final real section of cobblestones. It's known as the section of M, and it's a very tricky section too because it's got 2 sections of tarmac on either side of the road with the cobbles in the middle. And look at this man, where did he come from? Stefan Wesemann has returned. I never saw him come back into the group, but he must have pulled himself inside out to catch up this chasing group.
Looking here at the face of Servais Knaven, a man who probably never started the race today dreaming he might win Paris Roubaix, as he ends the last serious section of cobblestones. 1.4 kilometres of them now, and he's getting the cheers of the crowd. A Dutchman, by the way, hasn't won this race for years. The last man to win it, Henny Kuiper, and he was back in 1983.
And it was on this section of cobblestones, Phil, when Henny Kuiper was leading, that in fact popped his front tyre off, and it took an awful long time to get a wheel change. In fact, eventually the mechanic panicked so much he couldn't get the wheel out, and they gave him a spare machine. Kuiper at the time was only 30 seconds in front, but he recovered enough to carry on to the finish and get the victory, and that was a great day for him. I think that was back in 1983.
The voice of experience there, Paul Showing, because he was in the breakaway that day in Paris Roubaix, and of course going on to a great career which started for Henny Kuiper in 1972 as Olympic champion. Well, we're back with the break, and so too is Wesemann. There he is, tacked onto the back. It'll be another fine piece of riding for this man. Inspired today, fighting against all of the odds. Unfortunately, because of energy lost today, I don't think he's able to help out Dirksens or George Hincapie. And with the extra firepower that Wesemann normally has, that might have made the difference. But I think right now, these riders are on for second place, and Dirksens is the man doing the work.
As he has been for very much of the race since we left the forest of Arenberg. This is a tricky section of cobblestones, you see, because of the fact that it is smooth at the side and you have to flick across from side to side, and that's where you can actually catch the front wheel and end up being thrown to the ground. You can see how wet the fields here are in the northern part of France. Flicking across from side to side on this section of cobblestones. Dirksens doing an awful lot of work. Wilfred Peters in 5th position there, digging so deep to stay with these guys. He wants to ride onto the stadium with the rest of the group, but this man now may well be causing the surprise. He was not the man that the team wanted to win, I shouldn't think, at the start of the day, because everybody wanted Johan to win for a 3rd possible time. But for Domo Farm Fleets, Phil, they needed a big win in the Classics, and it looks very much right now as if it's going to go to Servais Knaven. But I tell you one thing, not if Ludo Dirksens has got anything to do with it. He's taking all kinds of risks going around these corners right now just to try and close it down. But the gap is opening. It's 30 seconds now from these riders up to the lone lead rider, Servais Knaven from Holland.
But what a way to ride a race now, and Servais Knaven, a rider who has won some races but nothing like Paris Roubaix, is trying now to steal the big classic, and because he's purely on the top team of the day and no other reason. If he'd have been a US postal rider now, this would be a different breakaway. They'd have chased him down. There is what is the rather contented face of Stefan Westermann. We're glad to be back with the group, I think, now. As he settles down, George takes a rather surprised look at him there as he came to the back of the race. Back up with the leader. This man has won 16 races in his life as a pro, which started back in 1994. Not a huge winner, but a very well respected bike rider.
Former national champion of Holland just now, and he's going to dig very deep. He's got knows there's one last false flat to come, and then it's all downhill into the stadium. The false flat is just out of this town that we're entering now, the town of Hem. George Hincapie on the front. Now, the fact that it's only 30 seconds would give somebody like George Hincapie or Johan Museeuw the possibility of leaping out of the group on that final false drag and maybe reintegrating the front. But you have to have super strong legs, and one man thinks he has. That's Ludo Dirksen. But right onto his wheel there, Johan Museeuw is not letting anybody have a chance of escaping the grip today of the Domo Farm Frites team.
Well, we've seen some heroes build their reputation today, none more so than Wilfred Peters, the great solid Belgian, none more so either than George Hincapie. He has come here with the magical legs you always hope you find on the big day, but unfortunately for George, he's been surrounded by enemies and he's trapped there too. Only Dirksen's the real man to help him out. The others know George's strength now. They greatly respect that, and they've weakened him with a series of attacks, and now they're making him do all of the pacemaking.
Well, he made one mistake, and that was letting Servais Knaven get off the front. He didn't have much else that he could do, really, because with them being in such superior numbers in this group, they were going to attack one at a time until they got one man off the front. Dirksen now riding alone on the front. It's a little bit strange, the fact that they didn't form a kind of coalition, Hincapie and Dirksen's trying to work together. But looking at the face of Knaven here, Phil, there's a lot more confidence coming into it. He feels pretty certain now that he's not going to get caught from behind. His advantage still hovering just on the 30 seconds. That's not enough to be certain of winning. As he goes round the corner there, there's no touch of the brakes at all. This is the town of Hem. There's a little left-hand turn in around about 100 metres, and then it's the false flat up to the summit and all downhill into the stadium.
Even the slightest uphill now must hurt those legs. He's giving it everything. I bet he daren't think about what is going to happen to him in the next few minutes, because it will now. The race is not going to come back. There's only George left to chase and Dirksen's, and they haven't got any more chase left in them. They've hit the psychological point now where they might be thinking of a second place, and there is Weinstein, I think it is now, having a little dig at the front, forcing a reaction from Stefan Westermann.
Well, it's good to see Westermann, but he sits up immediately. He knows he's got Ludo Dirksen on his wheel. Weinstein's trying to jump off the front with the possibility of a 1-2, and let's not even believe the possibility of a 1-2-3 for Domo Farm Frites. The team manager Patrick Lefevre would be absolutely ecstatic if, having started a brand new team, he could come away with a clean sweep at the end of Paris-Roubaix, a race which is very dear to his heart.
And how many successes has he had in this event? He's come here, he's almost expected to win these days, but he really pulled his team out of the depths of no results to do this ride today, and they've all clicked on the right moments. As they came into the forest of Orenburg, it was Wilfred Peters who launched the attack. Then we thought they would use this man on the capture to be cannon fodder for George Hincapie to swallow up, and then launch Museeuw to the win. But the way it's worked out, this man is going to get the victory in Paris-Roubaix now. They are not coming back. It's out to 35 seconds. He is going clear, and very soon in the showers he's going to be celebrating the victory. And still, they're so confident that he's going to stay away now, they're even attacking for the second place.
Watch out for the counter-attack though, because Dirksen's is a very strong bike rider and taking up the chase. Hincapie coming across. Hincapie is going to try and keep this group together, because if they can keep the group together on the run in, Hincapie has a very good chance of getting second place and being the best ever placed American in this Paris-Roubaix.
Servais Knaven, a man who turned pro in 1994. He finished 12th in Paris-Roubaix last year and 3rd in Hepvolk in that same year. The man who finished 3rd in the recent Gent-Wevelgem this time around is behind him, and the man that won it is behind him. We've lost Leon van Bon a while back now, the rider who finished in second place. But this is a rider now who was once the champion of Holland, very early on in his pro career. In fact, he won it in his second full season as a pro, but he is now about to land his first big classic race.
Little dig by Hincapie there, but he's going nowhere at all. In second position, marking him absolutely down to the line, is Johan Museo. Weinstein's very much to the front too. The rain starting to come down now on the roads of Roubaix. We're not too far away from seeing the Flamme Rouge, the sign that indicates the last kilometre. Ludo Dirksen trying his chance now to get off the front, but again it's Johan Museo who is absolutely nailing them back, keeping this group all together. Taking up the rear is Stefan Weissermann, but Domo Farm Frites have done an absolutely magnificent job today.
These riders have come and gone, reformed and done everything possible, and then this man made it in his turn, his attack. He's clear now. He's still got just half a minute, but in the streets here they won't see him now, and the helicopter won't be easy to spot either, because we're in the industrial area as we course now through M, heading shortly into the streets of Roubaix. Then almost annoyingly, the organisation throw in a special little stretch of cobblestones at the kilometre to go mark, where we leave the highway, join the cobbles, then cross the highway into the gates of Roubaix. He is looking now so confident, he knows he's going to win the race.
Well, he would know if he was starting to weaken, and he's certainly not doing that. Pedalling action is still very regular, very consistent. The smile is creeping into his face now. Barring an accident, he's not going to be caught before he rides onto the podium and then into the stadium, I should say. This is a pretty dramatic ride here. I don't think anybody would have put the name of Servais Knaven down as a winner of Paris Roubaix, but that is who it's going to be today. He's got one last flick onto those ornamental cobblestones just outside the stadium. Then he will take the right-hand turn and sweep around and be able to enjoy his last lap. He comes across the finishing line and faces one lap of the velodrome here in Roubaix, and there is the banner indicating the last 1,000 metres to go, and this is going to be a magnificent performance by this man, and it will certainly be the greatest performance of his career.
The gates are open, entering the last piece of pavé. This is 300 metres long. Inside a kilometre to go now to the greatest moment of his career. He won the Tour of Denmark early on in his pro career, like he won the National Championship. Since then he's been in command of other teams' orders, as he was today, but this time the dice dropped in his favour, and now it is Johan Museo going alone, and I don't think there's anyone else got the legs to go after him. That's amazing. Wait for the cheers now for Knaven, but he's going to see his own teammate come in behind him.
Well, I think Museo's a bit further down the road than that, but Museo is definitely not going to give up. You can see now the big screen at the finish there. This is what everybody's waiting for. They're waiting for Servais Knaven to take the last corner into the stadium. The bikes are out of the way. The Dutchman is on the track.
And a very glacial track it is too now, not for the nervous. Many of these road cyclists don't like riding on velodromes. They're not track riders, but now Knaven can enjoy the scene here now in the centre of Roubaix. He passes beneath our commentary position. He knows he's won now. He's got one full circuit of the track to go, and as the professional he is, he's cleaning the mud off to the name of his sponsor, which is Domo, and they are going to now try for a second place finish as well, because Museo is still clear of the group.
Well, this is a great ride by him. He's going to have to try pretty hard to get the sponsor's name visible, but what a magnificent way to win Paris-Roubaix, totally alone on the stadium, nobody to challenge you, the time to savour the victory, as he nearly lost it there. He's jubilating so much as he comes up there, and very shortly he will probably see his own teammate coming onto the track at the same time.
I think you're certainly right, Paul, as he salutes the crowd here. They've got a Dutch winner here for the first time since 1983. There's only been 4 riders from the Netherlands win Paris-Roubaix. And this is Johan Museo now getting the bell as he signals back to his man. You've done it, and well done. And Museo will get second as Dirksen now brings on the drive as they've got one lap to go. So Servais Knaven stays on the lower slopes of the velodrome. Now going round the outside, can George Hincapie pull out at least a third place finish as we watch Johan Museo cross the line? The man who won it last year is back again. Despite the punctures and problems, the hard riding kept him in the race, and it didn't quite work out, but it worked out for the team all right. Knaven is the winner. Johan Museo gets another great place in Paris-Roubaix. Second for him. He won't be unhappy about that, because he'll drink the champagne with his teammate tonight as he looks across to the centre of the track. The third place, it's a 1-2-3. Roman Weinstein's the world champion is over, and it's George Hincapie gets fourth again. And I think the reason Wilfred Peters there was upset is because he only came in fifth. Well, this is George Hincapie now in the centre of the stadium. Helpers around him. Fatigued, not surprised, because this man has given everything. He has given everything to the victory. He should be happy with fourth. The odds were absolutely impossible. He deserves now a great shower, some warm water and a nice chat. Let's eavesdrop and just see what they're saying to him.
Say a couple words. George, super race. How discouraging was it with all the Domo guys there?
It was really disappointing because felt like I was one of the strongest, but it was just impossible. You know, they chased him down one time, and you just know that as soon as you catch one guy, they're going to go again. So you got to take your hats off to the Domo. They were a super team today. You know, had super legs today, but it's just impossible with a team like that against you.
They were going good. What happened in the forest to you when you were going through in the front?
I flatted my front wheel and had to stop and bridge back up. So.
You won get well, but you did a fantastic race here. You had trouble with Domo. You feel you have the capabilities to win the race next year?
Definitely. I mean, I know that I can win this race one day.
Thanks, George, man. Super.
Fantastic, George.
How did Carnarvon get away in the end there, George?
I think you saw it. I mean, they just kept counterattacking us. You know, you go one after one guy. It's impossible to chase everybody down. It was an impossible situation for us, for me.
Turkson seems to be working with you to some extent.
Well, no. I mean, we wanted to. We're going for the win, but it was impossible with four Domo guys, and you know, they really didn't do anything all day. They rode an amazing race. They were able to conserve energy all day. They never took a pull until the end, and I mean, they had a super day today.
Well, George certainly had a great day today. The face here of Wilfred Peters, the man, and Rolf Sorensen having a late fall too, and not looking too happy there at all. But nonetheless, he arrived in Roubaix in what has been one of the toughest races for a decade. This man now, Franco Ballerini, twice a winner of this superb event, loved by the French public, and choosing Paris Rubé to be his final bike race. And what a wonderful career he's had. He's the man who has scored high finishes in so many classic races. A chance to ride down the Roubaix velodrome for the last time for him, and the crowd appreciating that. Franco Ballerini, 36 years of age, won a total of 19 races, and one of the most consistent riders in Italy when it comes to classic cycling. Franco Ballerini finishing today 32nd, 8 minutes and 13 seconds behind the winner, but he was the winner of this event in 1998 and before that in 1995.
Well, I won't keep you long because it's pretty cold. How did you fall off today?
Yeah, I went down 3 times today. One of the first sectors, and then got back up, got in a couple of groups, and went down another 2 times. And the last time I hurt myself, so that was the end of the day.
Once you get onto the cobblestones, do you really know what's going on in the bike race?
Mate, you can look up and see a little bit in front of you, but there's guys going down everywhere, and we didn't know after that second crash. I didn't know what was going on, how far we were behind, or what was going on. But George had a great ride, but we weren't there to help him today. But he's had a great ride anyway.
Do you think you could have done anything against 4 Domos?
No, unless we had 4 of us.
It seems like you have a special affection to Paris Rubé, and 1, 2, 3 again must make you a happy man.
I love Paris Rubé.
What is so special about it, and why does your team become so motivated for this race, which is somewhat of a crazy race?
Because we have the specialists in our team. We love this race, and it's a battle, man against man. It's like in a war. They can't ride on the wheel too much, and we With a general on the team like Johan Museeuw, it's almost easy.
What about the performance today of Wilfred Peters? He's really set it up for the whole team.
He made the way free for the other guys. I'm very sad for Wilfred that he didn't win, because I'm sadder for him that one of his friends make losing him the race.
And what about Roubaix Carnavon? Was Johan really happy that he won, or would he prefer to go across the line first himself?
If you saw the last lap of Johan, there's needs much words.
Thank you.
It was very difficult. I think individually George was probably the strongest guy of the race, but first of all, he couldn't do anything against the overpower of Domo. 4 guys always in the brakes, so they didn't have to take one pull. And then secondly, George punctured twice at the moment where he was in attack in Arenberg and another time with Ludo Dieriksen. So I think the podium would have been nice, but there was nothing we could do against Domo.
What about the fact that in the last few events it looks as if the team was pretty strong and would have been able to support him, but he was isolated pretty early?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think if you would have had one teammate with him, it would have made a lot of difference. I didn't speak to everybody, so I don't know what happened, but I know there has been crashes on the first 3-4 cobblestones, and that a couple of our guys were in those crashes. I think it was for everybody the same. Everybody had crashes, everybody had punctures. So it's a pity. George was definitely very, very strong. The team was not so strong as last year. Maybe on dry conditions it would have been different. I know that Ekimov, he's really scared when it's raining. Vasseur, Matthew White doesn't like the cold, so it's circumstances, it's not an excuse. He was the strongest, I think, but there were other teams that were stronger in overall.
Next year?
Well, if he goes on like that, it will have to be one year. So let's say next year, yeah.
Well, gosh, let's hope it is next year for George Hincapie. He really is a man of Paris Roubaix, but beaten today by Roubaix Carnavon, 6 hours and 45 minutes. Johan Museeuw second, Roman Veenstains third. A 1-2-3 for the Domo team, and then came George Hincapie and Wilfred Peters. A great moment then for Roubaix Carnavon, who now knows what it's like to win Paris Roubaix. And as he hits the handlebars there, looks over to see everybody else arriving, confirming that Johan Museeuw would get second place, the man who's done it before here in Roubaix. And plenty of time to move out of the way of the flying Ludo Dierksens here, who had a brilliant race, and again, like George Hincapie, outnumbered and outgunned by the Domo's superior team tactics. Here they are on the podium. Roman Veenstains, by the way, now is the new leader of the World Cup. He has been the most consistent so far. Don't they look different when they've got clean faces after that rough ride they've had today out on the cobblestones? We thought we'd never see this happen again. Now we seem to see it almost on a regular basis. 1, 2, 3 from the same team. A happy word there from Johan Museeuw. He doesn't look at all unhappy that he's finished second this time around, because it's his younger teammate Roubaix Carnavon who has tasted a wonderful piece of glory in the toughest classic of them all, the race from Paris to Roubaix. Well, on this occasion, Paris-Roubaix certainly lived up to its name, and the Mavic service crews had their hands full because they had to keep everybody on the road in what was a very exciting race. Only the 5th victory ever for a Dutchman, and Roubaix Carnavon, I bet he wasn't expecting to win that when he set out this morning from Compiègne. This was a great race. George Hincapie, I think, could do no better than 4th under that sort of opposition. The team tactics again playing a major role. I hope you enjoyed this one. It was a great one, and next year, don't forget, it'll be the centenary. Until then, for Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye. Well, I hope you enjoyed yet another cycling video from World Cycling Productions as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Now, what many of you probably don't know is that I'm also the international editor of Cycle Sport, a fully international magazine which brings you all of the up-to-date news in the cycling world. It brings you profiles and reports of the top bike races and also stories of the men that make the news. And it keeps you up to date too with the technical innovations in our sport. I think we produced the magazine using some of the world's best writers. I know we certainly have one of the world's best photographers in Graham Watson. If you love cycling, you should see this book, and here's how you go about getting a subscription. Subscribe to Cycle Sport and we'll send you a free WCP video. Just call the number listed or visit our website cyclesportmag.com for a complete listing of the free videos available and for other special offers too. Don't miss this chance. I'm sure you'll love the magazine, and I look forward to visiting you each month through my column. Colnago is one of the perennial favourites of riders on the pro peloton. Why? Because Colnago bikes win races. Over history, Colnago bikes have been ridden to victory in the Giro d'Italia, in the Tour of Flanders, and a record-breaking 5 times in Paris Rubé. In fact, they've won the last 5 out of 6 editions of this great event. Now that's one amazing bike. World Cycling Productions is the exclusive catalogue distributor of Colnago frames in America. To see more about these magnificent frames, simply call the numbers on the screen for a World Cycling Productions catalogue or visit our website at www.worldcycling.com. WCP is one of the largest Colnago dealers in North America, with selection and pricing to ensure that you can own one of these magnificent bikes.